Hey everybody, hope you're all doing well today. It's your boy Cyclical coming back at you with another Naruto discussion video, and I guess Shikamaru's the Hokage now? I don't know much about this, admittedly. I don't watch Boruto, I never have, haven't read it or anything. I choose not to engage with it, not my cup of tea. However, this does have me interested because Shikamaru is one of my favorite characters in the whole series. He's not one of the guys I consider to be the coolest or anything, but I think his personality is most similar to my own personal one, and that's why I'm actually excited to get a chance to talk about him for once. Now, today's video is going to be a little bit different from ones I normally do. This isn't going to be so much a power scaling video, I'll have a short section on that, but today's video is going to be much more focused on how strong an opponent Shikamaru could hypothetically beat if you afforded him all the prep time he needed to do so. So without any further ado, I'm just going to jump right into it and we will get started. So, I think the first thing you need to consider when we talk about Shikamaru in a situation where he has all the prep time that he needs is to acknowledge two things. The first of those is going to be how strong Shikamaru actually is as a ninja in the first place, more on that in just a second, and how vital prep time can be in a fight against a stronger opponent. I want to take a look at this second one first because it's going to take a lot less time to go over. I'm going to just actually highlight one thing about the concept of prep time and point out that with enough prep time, Konan was able to kill Obito. And I don't mean that she pressured him a little bit in a fight or anything. Obito actually died when Konan fought against him. He had to use the Izanagi to unwrite his own death and come back from the grave. This is freaking crazy. I mean, Obito is one of the strongest members in the Akatsuki, and most people would actually tend to put him towards the very top of the entire series in terms of power scaling overall. When we take someone like Konan, who is clearly a league or two below Obito, and say that she actually was able to kill him just because she had enough prep time to do so, I think it's pretty clear how important prep time can be in a fight against an opponent who's stronger than the person we're affording the prep time to. That said, prep time does not cover every weakness that a fighter can have, and it's certainly not without its limitations. I'll go more into those in just a second, but I'm going to jump back to our other pin that we have, and that is just how strong Shikamaru is overall as a ninja. Now, Shikamaru has a pretty simple arsenal. He mostly uses his control over shadows through things like shadow stitching, shadow strangle, and shadow possession jutsu to trick his opponents into doing moves that he wants them to do to trap them in an unwinnable situation. What this means for him is that anybody he's fast enough to keep up with or strong enough to overpower is basically dead meat against him because his superior intellect leads them into situations that they simply cannot win. How strong is he though? Well, we know for a fact that Shikamaru probably isn't the fastest of the original Rookie 9. I mean, look at the War Arc for example. When the God Tree starts sprouting its roots and sucking all of the ninja dry of their chakra, Shikamaru is the only one of the Rookie 9 who even gets touched by this at all. Granted, he does survive and he doesn't get caught right away, which puts him a good bit above several of the other ninja who are around and all get caught by it, but he is still at the bottom of the barrel in terms of speed based on this feat. We can take this a step further and also extrapolate from his fight against Hidan and Asuma that, aside from Choji, he probably was the slowest one on the battlefield. You could argue who's faster between him and Ino because Ino really doesn't do anything in that situation, but Hidan has no trouble really keeping up with Shikamaru, at least not when Shikamaru's not chasing him down with shadows, and Kakuzu, especially with the aid of his masks, is able to put way too much pressure on Shikamaru for him to handle. It's on multiple occasions that Kakashi has to get involved while he's busy fighting one of the other two people present and help Shikamaru out in his sticky situations. We also see him just barely react to Kakuzu's sneak attack when they try to ambush Hidan and Kakuzu with Team Asuma, and it's from this that we can extrapolate a little bit of a power scale for Shikamaru. Without going too crazy in depth about any of this, I want to say that Shikamaru, especially since he's still at Chunin for most of the series, is probably physically on par with most Chunin. I mean, keep in mind that he got promoted to Chunin level in the first place because he was the only person in the entirety of the Chunin exams to have the common sense to admit when he was beaten. This means, on the flip side, that he wasn't promoted due to his physical abilities, and so it's likely that, especially given how lazy Shikamaru is, he probably isn't training his physical stats very much over the course of the series. We can give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he might be on par with like your average Jonin who's been freshly promoted, but honestly, I wouldn't personally place him that high, and I'm much more comfortable saying that he is average Chunin in terms of his overall stats. So, this is actually going to place him on par with people like the Sound 4 or like Sasuke with his curse mark at the end of part 1, etc., people in that ballpark, which is actually a wonderful place for us to start. See, for the purposes of this video, I'm going to be examining the abilities of Shikamaru from Shippuden, especially like the War Arc. Now, like I said earlier, I don't watch Boruto, so we're just going to cap it off at the end of the War Arc for Shikamaru's scaling here. What we know is that Shikamaru's arsenal allows him to take near complete control of the physical inputs of another person's body via the Shadow Possession Jutsu. We see this take place especially in instances like when he prevents Naruto from stepping on the tripwire in the pursuit of the Sound 4, or when he leads Hidan off into the woods to execute his plan against Hidan and Kakashi. We do, however, know that this has limits, especially in his fight against people like Tayuya or the Stupid Brothers in that one filler arc that nobody seems to remember or even care about. Anybody who's physically too strong for Shikamaru to handle can actually literally overpower his Shadow Possession Jutsu or the Shadow Strangle technique. Additionally, anybody who's too fast to be caught by his shadows or who is smart enough to not be caught by them in the first place also is pretty much off limits for Shikamaru to take any sort of a strategic victory against. I say this because anybody that he can't catch in the Shadow Possession Jutsu is going to be too much for him to handle anyway, since his physical stats don't make up for the difference in speed that would be present between someone who can avoid his jutsu and his own taijutsu ability. And so with that parameter out of the way, we can actually put together a pretty neat list of people that Shikamaru can actually control if he catches them with the Shadow Possession Jutsu. So finally, let's start going down the line and looking at a list of ninja that Shikamaru might be able to beat if he has the prep time to do so. The first and most obvious punching bag for him would be Madara Uchiha. Can he do it? You know, Madara's the big bad of the series, and he's the one that pretty much everybody gets stacked up against. If you ever hear somebody argue in the Naruto community about who's a strong ninja, the question usually boils down to, yeah, but how would they do in a fight against Madara? And unfortunately, in Shikamaru's case, the answer here is not good. To Shikamaru's credit, I'm not going to deny that I think Shikamaru is a better strategist and overall smarter person than Madara is. However, there are just too many things that go against him here, even if he has all the prep time in the world to prepare. The first of these things is that if we take intel into account, Shikamaru knows basically nothing about Madara's abilities. If he was to know, hey Shikamaru, you're going into a fight against Madara Uchiha, he'd probably be able to glean a couple of things. First of all, he might know the name Madara Uchiha, which would tell him that this is a legendary shinobi and that he should be prepared for a large variety of things that are all very dangerous to happen. The second of these is that he's an Uchiha and therefore probably has a Sharingan, and that's pretty much all Shikamaru would know for the most part. If you want to give him information from the later parts of the War Arc, that's totally fine because it honestly changes absolutely nothing. See, Madara has things like his wood clones, or the limbo clones, or the ability to use the Susanoo, or any of the Rinnegan powers, or any of his Mangekyo Sharingan abilities that he didn't display, or his crazy elemental releases, or just the fact that he is physically too much of a beast for Shikamaru to handle. I honestly cannot envision any sort of a situation in which Shikamaru traps Madara in a position that he can't win from. That is to say, imagine Shikamaru wraps Madara in the wires covered with the paper bombs like he did against Hidan. What's Madara gonna do there? Well, pretty simply, Madara can just kind of activate his Susanoo, break the wires, and be completely safe from anything Shikamaru would throw at him. Also, given the fact that Madara is Kage level in terms of physical strength and can contend with people like KCM2 Naruto in hand-to-hand scuffles, I have no doubt about the idea that Madara would simply be able to break his way out of the Shadow Strangle Jutsu or the Shadow Possession Jutsu and just mollywop Shikamaru after that. So I'm going to move on down the scale and talk about somebody weaker. How much weaker? Well, let's talk about Sage Mode Naruto? I mean, Sage Naruto's nowhere near on the level of Madara, but he's still like kinda Kage level, so maybe Shikamaru can do this one, right? Well, unfortunately for him, I think the answer's still no here. See, while Shikamaru, even if he does know everything about Naruto's kit here, is in some pretty serious trouble. The first is a similar reason to Madara. Naruto is just too physically strong to be controlled by the Shadow Possession Jutsu. However, he is vulnerable to a lot of things that Madara isn't. He can't protect himself without casting any hand signs like Madara can do with the Susanoo, and in fact, if Naruto doesn't have any clones out and does get caught in a situation where he can't control his own body, he might actually lose. Unfortunately for Shikamaru, like I've already stated, Naruto wouldn't be able to be controlled by the Shadow Possession Jutsu, and he tends to start all of his fights with the Clone Jutsu anyway. I can't think of another situation like, I don't know, maybe the paper bomb thing again for instance, in which Naruto can't defend himself. Say for example Naruto gets caught in the shadow stitching technique and can't move. Well, he's probably already got clones out, and even assuming that Shikamaru got the right Naruto, that's the actual body in the first place, his clones could still activate something like a Rasen Shuriken to throw from distance, or could use the Frog Kumite, or could use the summoning jutsu, or could just, you know, run up on Shikamaru and beat the crap out of him while he's distracted with Naruto's main body. And Naruto wouldn't even be in danger, because even if he was overpowered by the Shadow Possession Jutsu, what's Shikamaru gonna do to him? Use the Shadow Strangle technique? Well, while this would work on most people, Naruto in Sage Mode actually has a literally increased durability to his skin. That's a rant for another time in explaining why ninjas don't actually have tougher skins than other people, but Naruto actually does, and we see this verbatim. It's not said out loud, but it is directly shown from the instance in the first time Naruto activates Sage Mode and falls off of the spire he was balancing on. He notices when he falls to the ground that he should have been severely injured from the fall, but really didn't feel a thing, indicating to us as an audience that Naruto's durability, his raw physical ability to withstand crushing blows and other such things, is off the charts while he's in Sage Mode. And what this means for Shikamaru is that if he tries to use something like the Shadow Stitching or the Shadow Strangle Jutsu, he might actually just be incapable of damaging Naruto's skin. Okay. Well, we're talking about people who are way stronger than Shikamaru is. I mean, I'm not even sure how strong he is as Hokage in Boruto, but these are all people who are Kage level in the Naruto era, and so maybe we should look at the other end of the scale and talk about people Shikamaru could beat, and move our way up from there. Okay, well, who do we start with then? How about any members of the Sound 4? See, like I already said, this is a pretty good comparison for him because their physical stats should all be comparable, and so Shikamaru's intellect should be able to win the day here. And to be fair to him, I think this is actually totally valid. In fact, by the time he's in the later stages of Shippuden, he might even be able to take on more than one of these guys at once. I'll reiterate that even in part 1, while Shikamaru was still just freshly tuning and had physical stats on par with his Genin teammates, he was able to contend pretty closely with Tayuya. Now, he did have to be saved from her, but that's mostly because he was only losing the stamina battle. Sure, she was physically stronger than him, but even thinking on the fly, he was able to concoct a plan that she wasn't able to win from and had to rely on overpowering him with her superior stats. If you gave Shikamaru prep time to prepare for this, I have no problem conceding that he would be able to come up with a pretty easy plan to counteract people like Tayuya, Kidomaru, and even Jirobo's abilities. In fact, he'd probably be able to just sneak up on them and catch them off guard, and that would be the end of the story. So clearly we need to increase difficulty from here. Well, how about maybe a Jonin? How about someone like Asuma, his own teacher? This one's actually pretty interesting. You see, Asuma should be a good deal faster and physically stronger than Shikamaru, but by the time we're in the later part of Shippuden, he probably can't just overpower the Shadow Possession Jutsu. I'll remind everybody now that it's hypothesized by Shikamaru himself and even Pakun that the ninja pursuing Naruto, Shikamaru, and Sakura during the Sasuke pursuit arc of the Chunin exams were all at least Chunin and possibly Jonin or higher level. This is hypothesized due to their tracking abilities. And Shikamaru, even while fatigued and having run through the forest for a good couple hours after his fight with Temari, is able to catch a full 8 enemy ninja in the Shadow Possession Jutsu and keep them completely immobilized for several full minutes. He, of course, doesn't know the Shadow Strangle Jutsu at the time and so can't easily dispatch them, but that's not an issue for him at this point. And if these guys all truly are Jonin level, well then that's probably bad news for someone like Asuma. See, we know for a fact that Asuma is not as intelligent as Shikamaru is, and so once again, I think Shikamaru would be fully capable of working Asuma into a corner. The real problem for him in a fight like this would be if Asuma was fast enough to do anything to counteract any plan that Shikamaru might make. For example, if Asuma was really gung-ho, he could just launch a burning ash at Shikamaru, and I'm not gonna say that would like one-shot him or anything, but if he starts with a tactic like that, it might kind of be game over for Shikamaru. But that said, I am still gonna give the benefit of the doubt to him, and especially if Shikamaru has prep time and it's someone like Asuma whose abilities he knows very well, I think it's pretty hard to argue that Asuma would be able to win if Shikamaru had time to prepare. So now we're going to get to kind of the middle of the scale, some midpoint between Sage Naruto and Asuma. Who could that be? Well, how about Kakashi? Well, what do we know about Kakashi? Kakashi is, first of all, an intellectual rival for Shikamaru, which is bad news for the man we're talking about today. We get it stated directly from Naruto's own mouth that Kakashi is smarter than Shikamaru is, at least if you're listening to the English dub of the anime. This doesn't exactly mean that Kakashi is pound for pound smarter than Shikamaru is, but we do have a few things that can actually corroborate this statement. The first of them is that by showings, Kakashi actually seems to be a more impressive strategist than Shikamaru is. See, Shikamaru is good at making complex long-term strategies, especially before a fight starts, but if he makes one in the middle of a fight, it's usually not as fleshed out. Comparatively, Kakashi manages to make several strategies in the middle of some pretty high-stakes moments that are all pretty impressive, honestly. Kakashi has intelligence feats of things like being able to dissect Kamui in the middle of a fight, which he is one of the only people to ever fully figure out how that jutsu works, and he's also able to keep up with Shikamaru's own plans with little to no explanation. We know this for a fact because when they all went on the Kakuzu and Hidan capture mission, that Kakashi was able to take orders from Shikamaru and he had no problem incorporating Shikamaru's plans into their own battle strategy. Not only this, but he was able to give his own feedback, which we see him mention that he's going to do before the screen cuts away before they discuss their battle plans. All that said, if we're playing the game of shogi here, for example, I still think it's possible Shikamaru might be able to beat Kakashi and work him into a pretty difficult situation. So really the question comes down to if it's possible for Shikamaru to trap Kakashi, not exactly the most likely thing, but still possible, then what do Kakashi's abilities have to say about whether or not this would actually work? Well, we know that Kakashi is pretty fast. He can keep up with Guy with the gates open, for example, and if he's fast enough to do this, and Hidan was almost completely capable of dodging away from Shikamaru's Shadow Possession Jutsu, then I think Kakashi is probably more than fast enough to avoid getting hit by it outright. This, of course, doesn't incorporate for any sort of strategy that makes a sneak attack possible for Shikamaru's Shadow Possession Jutsu, but Kakashi also knows the ins and outs of the jutsu, just like Shikamaru would have a decent understanding of most of Kakashi's capabilities here. And if Kakashi is able to know the inner workings of a jutsu like Shadow Possession, it means it's just going to be all the easier for him to avoid getting caught in it since he knows exactly how it functions. He's smart enough to know to avoid shadowy areas and the like, and so he probably wouldn't be an easy target to hit with it. How about if he does get hit though? Would he be restrained? Well, physically, probably yes. He doesn't seem to be too much physically stronger than someone like Asuma or Hidan is, and so it's likely that he'd be immobilized by the jutsu, but this is where other parts of his arsenal come into play, and particularly since we're talking about a Shikamaru from mid to late Shippuden here for the most part, then we have to do the same time period for Kakashi, and he has Kamui at his disposal. We see him use hand signs to activate it the very first time that he does so, but after this, he never does that again, which means that Kakashi can probably activate Kamui without even moving. This is catastrophically bad for Shikamaru, because this means that Kakashi will be able to just suck Shikamaru away without even being able to look at him. The only way that Shikamaru can avoid this happening is if he catches Kakashi in the Shadow Possession Jutsu with his back turned, which typically is not how it goes. That said, I think that it's possible Shikamaru could take on Kakashi, especially with enough prep time, and so I think that's actually about where he caps out. To answer the question posed at the beginning of the video, yes, Shikamaru is a lot stronger with prep time. This takes him from being somewhere in the mid to high Chunin range to being possibly able to contend with low Kage level opponents, people like Kakashi, probably Mei, for example, as well. I'm not going to say that he definitely could do people like this, but I don't want to say that he couldn't either. I know this was kind of more of a rambling type of video, but I hope you guys all enjoyed it nonetheless. In any case, I will hope to see all you guys in my next video, but until then, y'all stay safe, have a good rest of your day, and goodbye.